everybody, this is Alain Mendez, otherwise known as C-Suite from ReverseThieves.com. You can go there to get a bunch of blog posts every week, as well as other podcasts, including our monthly Speakeasy podcast. But this time, I am doing a solo Riot Control review for the first episode of Knights of Sidonia from Polygon Pictures, and it is streaming, unusually enough, on Netflix, of all things. In fact, they're listing it as a Netflix original series. They obviously did not make it. It was obviously an anime, but they are distributing it and even putting a dub on it, which is quite unusual. If you're wondering why I'm doing it now, they waited till the whole series was over in Japan, and they're only now just putting it on Netflix. I decided to wait for it to come out legally streaming before watching it. So this is a review of the Netflix version, not the bootleg subs. So how is the inaugural effort of Netflix, picking up an anime series? There's other anime on Netflix, but this is the first series that they've picked up by themselves to distribute, to add to their catalog. And so, I don't know, I'm conflicted. Kind of like how I was about the manga. There's Alan's personal review and then my review as a reviewer, as in what I say about it. And part of me wonders how much of my take on the anime is being prejudiced by my take on the manga, but let's get into it. I mean, Knights of Sidonia definitely had a big amount of anticipation. The manga is being released by Vertical, sci-fi series, especially with segments of fandom. That's a genre that has kind of fallen by the wayside. So I know a lot of people were just hyped for a new sci-fi franchise with mecha that, wasn't Gundam or, a Sunrise series based on something from Afternoon, not where you normally see mecha anime. I think a lot of people were excited about it. In a way, I feel like a lot of them are going to be happy with this, but I just keeps falling off. But the general plot is that it's in the future. There are these aliens who have been attacking Earth, destroyed humanity, and there are only a few spaceships, colony ships left fighting the Earth. In fact, the one that we're on, the Sidonia, they're not even sure if any other spaceships still exist. So as far as they know, this is the last ship that has any vestiges of humanity. There might be other ships out there. There might have been colony ships that even colonized new worlds. They might have even been taken back to homeworld. The Sidonia doesn't know that. They've got to kind of fight with what they've got left, assuming nobody else is out there. We start with a young man who kind of lives in the bowels of this colony ship. His grandfather was taking care of him, keeping him sheltered from the normal inhabitants of the colony ship. But after his grandfather dies, he runs out of food, and he goes to steal some food from the rice supplies, and he gets caught. Instead of throwing him in jail, they enlist him into the army as a pilot, and wackiness and space opera ensues in equal measure. I feel like this is really one of those series that appeals to kind of the literary sci-fi fandom, in my opinion. I feel like when I think of literary sci-fi fandom, I think of people who are really obsessed with the kind of settings and ideas, and to them, characters are kind of secondary and unimportant. If you can pull off interesting characters and good characters, that's like a bonus, but what it's really about is the ideas. Everything else is secondary. So if your characters are horrible or flat, that doesn't matter. As long as it's exploring a cool idea or an interesting setting, then you have succeeded. Whereas I feel kind of like TV science fiction fans, they're kind of more famous for liking sci-fi settings with really great characters. But, the sci-fi or the setting can kind of be rehashed or not as greatly thought out. And I feel like those two segments of sci-fi fandom agree on certain titles that have both, but when the titles really focus on one or the other, that's when you really see the clash between the two fandoms. And, there's some fandoms that will, basically, if you don't have what I want, I totally won't support anything else from the other side. And I feel Sidonia is really kind of more towards the literary sci-fi fandom. It's this interesting setting, interesting war. I mean, because there's so many humans in such a cramped space, and, it's kind of the last of humanity. There's been a lot of genetic alteration going on. There's clones. We see these pink-haired girls, and there are 9 of them. Because, basically they don't have time to find mates and pump out children naturally. Cloning is just more easy. And you've got a lot of third genders, people who are basically neither male or female. They both basically have fully functioning sex organs of both type, and they can basically just choose which one they want to use when they want to mate with someone. There's a dorm lady who's a bear, and most people at least supplement most, if not all, of their dietary income through photosynthesis. So the fact that the main character only eats food and has no photosynthetic part of his diet kind of makes him a little bit of a weirdo in the normal culture. So, and these aliens have very weird biology, kind of all of the things that literary sci-fi fandom loves. But the characters really seem alien. And once again, I had hoped that maybe they'd play the characters a little more from the manga, but I don't really feel that's the case. I do not like the original manga's paneling, and I feel like the director of this anime does kind of smooth over some of that. I feel a little less of the this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Still feels a little rushed. The thing is, there's not an overabundance of exposition, because usually when you say that, you're talking about basically characters who tell you everything and don't show you everything, and that's not the case. It's something about the way that the story just kind of moves from scene to scene. It's kind of the transition between scenes and how long they spend time on things that I just never really like. I don't know what it is about it, but it always just seems weirdly choppy. This episode feels a little clipped, but I feel like it really wants to sell you on the world and kind of the different types of story that is in this. So in that case, it's all forgiven, because I feel like probably after this point it's gonna slow down, but it's really kind of gotta sell you on the setup of the story, sell you that Sidonia, the people here are really different than humanity, and then, there's gonna be cool battles between mecha and aliens. So it's got to kind of do all of that in equal measure in the first episode. So it being a little clipped, I totally forgive, because you really kind of want to sell all the high points of the series in the first chapter while still doing it in a way that isn't totally artificial. I don't know. Still, a lot of people really talk up this series, and in that case, the story-wise, you're gonna like it if you kind of like that. It is an interesting setting. I can't get into any of the characters. They're not bad characters. They just feel more like cardboard cutouts there to move the story along more than actual people. There's a little bit of fan service and a little bit of weird comedy, but nothing really I don't think will turn off anybody, especially if you've been watching anime for a while. You'll be like, alright, yeah, changing scene, alright, some weird comedy, but nothing egregious. Actually, the thing that's probably going to turn off the most people is it's all CG, and I know that was probably the biggest barrier to my roommate who watched it with me. It's not the worst. It's definitely getting better. Once again, I always feel like Japanese CG is getting better, but they really need to up those frame rates. If you go and you listen to the Awesome Cast, I forget which episode, but they talk about one episode where there was this lady who was at a con who did a lot of work in both the American and Japanese anime industries, and she was talking about how a lot of the companies, the CG artist will render the CG on their own personal PC and not on a server farm. And so I think that explains a lot of the kind of mediocre CG, and they really got to up their game. They're getting better, but they still need a lot of improvement. And the CG in Knights of Sidonia is perfectly tolerable to me. But if you want really good CG, you're gonna be disappointed. You know, this is no Pixar. But I mean, I feel like it's serviceable. I mean, if you just want a good sci-fi story, you're not gonna be super distracted, or at least I wasn't, but it's also not super praiseworthy. It's sufficient, but not much more than that. Standard, you can kind of judge what your greater enjoyment's going to be. And once again, I don't like this series, but it's not a series that I wouldn't recommend to a certain type of person. Because, I mean, there's a lot to like about the world. And I mean, I keep reading the manga because, you know, people just, once again, I get it free from the library. But I mean, I feel like I want to like this series, and there's a lot to recommend about it. I just, it never clicks with me. But I think I try to present a lot of what people would like about this series. If you gather from what I like, man, my tastes are totally like yours, then you're probably not going to like it. But if you're like, oh no, the things that you're complaining about, they don't really bother me, then I actually might really like this series. So that's my recommendation. All right, see you guys next time.